Thermal cutting appeared at the beginning of the 20th century thanks to the invention of two very specific tools. The first invention was made as early as 1909 by the German engineer Hecht, who that year developed the first underwater gas-burning torch. Very quickly, this cutting tool will prove to be very effective to such an extent that other countries like France, England, the United States, and some others will also develop their own cutting torch. For 2 decades, most of these tools operated essentially through the combustion of an oxygen-acetylene or oxygen-hydrogen flame. Then in 1933 the Germans innovated once again by creating a highly efficient blowtorch that worked with gasoline. Then a few years later it was the turn of propane gas and its various derivatives such as MAP gas to appear on the market. This burning technique with a blowtorch, which was used very heavily and mainly in Europe until the 1960s, is still favored by some companies, but on the whole it tends to be replaced by electric cutting, which was developed and implemented for the first time by the American company Merritt Chapman and Scott in 1919. Becoming aware of the capacities of such an electrical cutting tool, the U.S. Navy will also develop a first oxy-arc cutting torch. Among those who participated in the design and the trials, we find in particular the Chief Petty Officer, John Henry Turpin, who was one of the first African-American Navy divers. The evolution of this cutting technique is slower than the first one, and it will therefore be necessary to wait until 1940 to see a real evolution in the design of electric cutting, as from that time the big carbon electrodes generally used are gradually going to disappear in favor of new finer tubular electrodes known as steel tubular rods. Later again, around the mid-70s, another type of cutting technique is introduced onto the market under the name of ultrathermic cutting method, which thanks to a new type of rod that can produce a temperature in excess of 5,535 degrees Celsius or 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, is hot enough to quickly cut or melt through almost anything including cast iron, stainless steel, brass, and other ferrous and non-ferrous metals, and even concrete. During all these decades, underwater thermal cutting has enabled a great deal of work to be done which would not have been possible without this process. Unfortunately, underwater cutting is also the cause of many serious and fatal accidents, one of the main causes being related to underwater explosions. If we refer to statistics established over a period of 40 years and published a few years ago, we can see that the fatal accidents due to explosions linked to underwater cutting are relatively high, since no less than 33 known accidents are listed there. To this list, we must also add the dozens of serious accidents as well as incidents which had less serious consequences and for which no statistics exist. Therefore, if you don't want to one day become part of these statistics, I encourage you to read these 2 documents, which will help you understand why and how these explosions occur. Reading them is easy. Just type the title into the search bar. You can then read them online or download them for free. Meanwhile, dive safe, and as our well-known colleague, John Rote always says, if you're making a cutting job, don't forget to vent, vent, vent.